Good afternoon and welcome to SHFM's Critical Issues Conference Series. My name is Sunita Devi and I am the CIC co-chair. Thank you so much for joining us today, and it really does mean a lot to have so many of you here participating virtually. Now, some of you may not know that the Critical Issues Conference originated in response to the events of 9/11 and our industry's responsiveness to the community's needs at that time. In its aftermath, SHFM members came together to host an area-wide conference and establish CIC as an annual event. Each year, inspired by its specific industry challenges and its opportunities, SHFM leaders select a critical issue as a focus of this conference, and this year could not be more relevant. Our industries were significantly impacted by the events of the pandemic and 2020. Our people experienced major changes and have overcome challenges to their work environment, business procedures, and also their operations. Most importantly, though, their well-being. Reaffirming diverse human capital as our most essential resource, our people have been flexible, adaptable, and fearless during this time, coming together while still apart. And as a result, people will be the heart of our recovery now and moving forward, recharging our industry. With an emphasis on leaders, employees, and customers, SHFM is focusing on the spotlight on people, the human side of hospitality, today and during the rest of the CIC series. And on behalf of the CIC Conference Advisory Committee, we welcome you. There were a few issues and matters that we did want to address during this conference. A few of them are creativity, innovation, diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. And I'm very proud to say, as a CIC chair, that we achieved all of these. Today's SHFM educational programming was developed by your peers who honor us all with their volunteerism. Thank you to the CIC Advisory Group for your contributions to the success of this virtual series. It was a massive collaboration. I also want to send a special thank you and a kudos to our CIC chair, Eric Cooley, for his amazing leadership to this group. And it was such a pleasure to work with him. And what would our event be without our generous sponsors? These companies have stood by us during our challenging times and at many times the darkest times, and stepped up to provide the resources we need to deliver outstanding educational events like this one. So thank you very much. Now, if you haven't done so yet, I do encourage you all to explore the CIC Solution Center. There you can find solutions for our SHFM CIC sponsors to help you and your businesses as the hospitality industry evolves and customers regather in the workplace. We'll definitely put a link in the chat so you can check that out later. Now, before we begin, we want to make sure that you all get the most out of this experience. Please ask your questions throughout the session in the Q&A window. Each speaker will have a brief Q&A session directly after their interview, so be sure to ask those questions throughout the session. And I see some of you have already got going on the chat, so please continue. Say a friendly hello to your SHFM familia. Now, this year's CIC Advisory Group added a charitable component to the conference by selecting World Central Kitchen as a recipient, an organization that deals with critical issues on a daily basis. As we focus on people during this year's CIC, we hope that you will help World Central Kitchen to do the same. Plus, for every $10 donated, you will automatically be entered for a chance to win one of our several exciting raffles. We all love raffles. Prizes include appliances, we all love appliances, and gift cards and more. So thanks to our amazing generous sponsors. All donations made via the CIC registration portal through 12 noon Eastern time on April 28th will be entered into a draw. So if you haven't donated already and would like to, we'll add the link into the chat as well so you can visit the CIC website after the session. And lastly, just as a reminder, this session is being recorded, so it can be played on demand. The recording will be available on the YouTube website and also on SHFM's website. Now, we have some amazing, phenomenal speakers today in the first installment of the CIC series, Exploring Leadership. And to tell you more about this session and our speakers, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's session host, Michael Franklin. Michael has been a client liaison member of SHFM for 11 years and has over 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry. Following college graduation and over the past 25 years, Michael has held numerous manager and director level positions, primarily in hotels, restaurants, and resorts. For the past 12 years, Michael has been with ConocoPhillips and is based at the headquarters location down south in Houston, Texas, as the Director of Events and Food Service Operations. Michael, I'm handing it over to you.
Thanks, Sunita. We are thrilled to put the spotlight on leadership today as we discover the common threads and individual approaches leaders utilize to inspire their companies, themselves, and their teams. In today's session, the SHFM CIC Advisory Group members will pose intriguing questions, revealing leaders' challenges and strengths. Each hospitality industry leader was specifically chosen by the interviewer because of their individual, exceptional, and unique leadership qualities. I'd like to welcome today's speaker lineup. Zia Ahmed, Senior Director, Dining Services, The Ohio State University, who will be interviewed by SHFM member Zia Shami, Z the Cook LLC, culinarian and owner. Jess Langhorne, Chief Human Resources Officer, Global Partners, who will be interviewed by SHFM member Dale Ray, Vice President of Transformation, Global Partners. Betti Wiggins, Nutrition Services Officer, Houston Independent School District, who will be interviewed by SHFM member Dan Morgan, Amenities Program Manager with Wells Fargo. Now, I'd like to introduce SHFM member Z Shami, who will interview Zia Ahmed. Zia is an SHFM Rising Star and the recipient of the 2020 SHFM Directors Award for Community Service. She is also the proud owner of Z the Cook, a culinary school based out of Metro Detroit in Michigan. Z, over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm so pleased to be here today to speak with Zia. Zia provides the highest level of oversight for over 30 dining facilities at The Ohio State University, which serves over 10 million customers annually. Zia is responsible for creating the vision and strategic directions for dining services. He has 25 plus years of college and university dining experience. Welcome, Zia.
Thank you, Z. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're honored. I'd like to inform everyone who's tuning in today to please make sure you leave your questions down at the bottom. We'd like to answer those questions at the end of Zia's session with me today. Zia, let's go ahead and get started. What does hospitality mean to you, and how does your definition of this term play a role in your leadership style?
Well, two of my many favorite words, hospitality and leadership. So I must say thank you to SHFM and to you for giving me the opportunity to talk about both of them today. So hospitality to me is all about serving people with kindness and generosity. That is so important. One thing I do every morning is make coffee for my team. And I don't drink coffee, right? And I like to remind myself every morning that you should start your day with hospitality, is by serving people with kindness and generosity. And that is all, that is about hospitality. And when it comes to leadership and how it connects, it's very interesting. It's the word serving, right? Because leadership is also about serving people, and with also generosity and kindness. Leadership about serving people that you are leading, serving with the people that you're serving, right? And also leading the people to develop them as well, because you're developing leaders underneath you if you are mentoring them. So I think that's the word that comes to my mind, is serving people, is and the hospitality and leadership connection to me. And I also believe, see, that the hospitality can be used universally in any industries. Oftentimes people think that hospitality is a word unique to the hospitality industry. Right? Because I work for this amazing institution where we have hospitals where we're serving people. We have teachers who are we're also serving students, faculty, where we have people like us where we're serving students, faculty, and staff, right? So I think the best doctors I've met in my life, or the best custodians I've met in my life, are the ones who are serving with service in mind, with kindness and with generosity, right? So you don't have to be just a person in the hospitality industry to consider the word hospitality is important to you.
That's so true. And I remember us talking about doctors, right? When a patient comes into a doctor's room, you know, that hospitality plays a big role in the effectiveness of that physician, right? And it really makes their patients either really comfortable with that physician or not. It's all about hospitality at the end of the day. So I highly agree with you. Great answer. I'd like to also ask you, Zia, what kind of a leader do you think that you are?
That's a great question, and I love that question. Often I get that question from people, right? And whenever I get that question, I think about two different ways of answering it. Number one, what type of leader I think I am, or what, and more importantly, what type of leader I think I want to become. I think that's, to me, is more important. And the other part is what type of leader the people I lead think that I am, right? There's a big difference between the two. So I would say that the leader that I want to become is more of a situational leader, an inspirational leader, right? The people who inspire others to be better, to be bigger than who they are, right? And also at the same time, be aware enough that I need to change my leadership style depending on the situation. Now, the other news is, if you really want to know what type of leader I truly am, you probably should ask the people I lead. I'm sure they will give you a lot of great answers.
That's right. That's right. That's so true, right? So there's different perspectives from each person. So how do you continue to ensure that everyone on your team is aligned with your organization's vision and mission over time?
Yeah, I believe it starts with inspiration, right? So I think a vision and mission needs to be very inspirational. That does not necessarily mean it has to be complicated, right? But it is hard not to follow a very inspirational mission. So over here, we often talk about that we're not in the business of food service, we're in the business of student development, right? And how can you not fall behind the idea of student development? Now, it doesn't just stop there, right? I think it's really important that if you have the opportunity, that you involve everybody within your organization as best as you can in development of that mission, or if they are not here for some reason, they were not part of the development of the mission, then be part of the communication process, right? And the communication process starts right from the interview. So when you're interviewing somebody, how well are you articulating your mission and vision to them, right? And not only just simply articulating the mission and vision, but how well are you communicating to them that the role that they're going to play, how are they going to contribute in that role to achieve that mission? And that's a really, really critical point, because typically average people, average employees are not going to wake up in the morning and think about what their mission is, right?
Right.
But they are going to think about the role that they play to make your company successful or make your organization successful. Now, if they clearly understand that that role is going to contribute to that mission, then that is the most critical part. I would rather have the people who are working within this organization know their role really well and know that they're contributing to the mission than recite the mission.
Oh my gosh, I just love your leadership style, and I truly agree with everything that you just said. When they feel like they're part of it, right, they tend to want to achieve greater results. So that's excellent. So they say that you can't take the elevator to success, but rather the stairs. So what has helped you grow to a high-ranking position at The Ohio State University, and what advice would you have for others who want to set off in a very similar direction?
Yeah, so to answer that question, it's very much related to people, because leadership is also a lot about people. I've been very fortunate that I have a global network of people who have supported me for many, many years. So I think really important to know that how you build your network, how you nurture your network, and how you return the favor to your network too. It's not always you're taking from the network, but you're also returning the favor. So at the end of the day, we often tell our children, right? Who do you surround yourself matters. So I think it's really important that people are very aware of who they surround themselves with. Of course, at the same time, I don't want to take away any of the personal things that we do, like hard work and dedication, right? There's no substitution for any of that. You still have to show up, you still have to work hard, and you have to dedicate yourself to the work that you're doing. The other thing that's really, really important for any leaders is the drive for progress. I think that has to be core of every leader, that you're never satisfied with what you have. You're constantly trying to make yourself better, constantly trying to make your team better, right? And trying to make everybody else around you better. So I think that's also really, really important to understand.
I just love that. As being in a leadership position, sometimes you're told, don't, maybe just, what you have is enough, right? But as leaders, naturally, we will always be hungry for more, right? We will always strive for more, and we want to empower others. We want to see innovation happen, right? And leadership take its course. And that's what is very unique to the leadership style of many people, is that they're always hungry for more. And it's a great thing, right? Awesome. And how do you continue to grow and develop as a leader? Are there certain books or programs or conferences or things that you do that really help you to develop?
Yeah, it starts with leadership, continuous development process, right? That is the most important thing. It starts there. And then, of course, after that, I believe the self-awareness is really, really important too, that, you have to be constantly self-aware of what type of leader you are in front of the team that you're serving. Right. And also how you're adjusting constantly, because learning from every single experience is really, really important, because all those tiny little experiences will have an overall contribution to your leadership style and the leader that you want to become. Now, of course, like you mentioned, the learning is very, very important, and learning happens in multiple different ways. I think reading is really important to me. Sure. And nowadays, what we call it reading can be a podcast too, right? That's I mean, you used to be just you pick up a traditional book and you read. The other thing is, being part of conferences like this, learning from each other, learning from your network, learning from your peers. Somebody once told me that the best thing about meeting people is whenever you meet somebody, they have something to offer to you that you don't know, you don't have, right? So everybody in this world has something to offer to you. They know something that you don't know. And understanding that and keeping that learning brain open all the time is really, really important. Also, every so often, go back to the traditional style. Go pick up a leadership book and take the time to read it, right? Like actually flipping a page, not scrolling your mouse. Because there are different ways that we all learn, right? So there's not one way that's better than the other. That's really important. And the last but not least, two things. One, I continue to encourage people to ask for feedback. It is so important as leaders to constantly ask your people that you're leading their feedback, or even on many cases your supervisors too. All right. And that's feedback is priceless, like it's a gift. And the other one is that frequent and intentional conversation about leadership. Often, many organizations, we see that organizations will focus so much on their KPIs, key performance indicators, whether it's food costs, whether it's labor costs, whether it's your mobile app performance, or how many subscribers you have in your mobile app, or how many likes you have in your Facebook, right? How many times on a daily basis organizations are having frequent and intentional conversations about leadership, just like the way you're having it here right now. And if we could set up KPIs for leadership, can you imagine how much better we can all get?
That is really true. So true. So true. Oh my gosh. I think that putting an attention to it more often, just like you said, is very critical and very important to every company, every leader, and every organization. Great answer, Zia. We are so happy you're here today. I do have some questions and answers that we are going to go through right now. Thank you, everyone who has submitted your questions for Zia. I'd like to start off, Zia, with this question, which was asked actually a few times by several different people. Who was the most influential person who has helped you during this journey? Is there a certain person?
Yeah, there's so many of them, so many. And traditionally, when we think about a leader that inspired us, we often go right to our profession, right? But we don't realize that a lot of times leaders are in our families, right? In our personal lives.
Right.
So I would say in many ways, my dad was a great inspiration to me, right? Mm-hmm. And then so it starts there. My grandfather, or or the other things that I have learned. Sometimes I am surprised and pleasantly surprised by how many leadership lessons I learned from my kids, from my two children, from two boys, right?
Kids.
So constant that there. I would say then definitely there were some impact that my teachers and my colleges that left for me, and also of course all the wonderful people that I reported to in my life. So there's so many leaders. It's like, you asking me that question is like asking me what's my favorite food is. My answer is what country, what ethnicity. There are so many of them, right?
That is so true. Oh my gosh. So that is so true. So what would you say to someone who does not want to lead? What do you think about that?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that at all, because that's why diversity and inclusion is so important in our life, because we play so many different roles. And I often tell the team over here that every position in our organization is equally important. Equally important. It doesn't matter what position you hold, whether you're a CEO of the company or you are a social worker doing social work, or whatever position you hold. Every position is equally important. If a position is not important, it shouldn't exist, right? We just have different jobs, and we all contribute to our mission in so many different ways. So there's nothing wrong with it if you're not the type of leader that everybody else thinks, the other people are, right? Just be your authentic self and contribute to the mission.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time today, Zia. I really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course.
Thanks, Zia and Z. Great conversation. Such a motivating and inspiring message you have there. Next, I would like to introduce SHFM member Dale Ray, who will interview Jess Langhorne. Dale Ray is the Vice President of Transformation at Global Partners LP. Dale's journey in hospitality started over 30 years ago as a cook, working with many of the founders of the American culinary scene. From there, he led kitchens of multiple James Beard award-winning restaurants. In 2013, Dale transitioned to the B&I industry with the LinkedIn Corporation, progressing to the head of global food, and over the next 7.5 years, spanning a portfolio including over 30 locations across Europe, Asia, and North America. Dale has recently moved into his new role as VP of Transformation at Global Partners, and in order to help the company transform into a leader into the hospitality space. Dale, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm super happy to be here today to welcome Jess Langhorne. Jess will begin his new position as Chief Human Resources Officer at Global this month. Previously, he came, as you mentioned, as a Corporate Vice President for Human Resources at McDonald's. Jess started his career at McDonald's UK, working behind the counter as a teenager, and progressed through various operational roles. Jess' reputation for heavy lifting on transformation work across McDonald's Europe led him to being handpicked in 2014 to join the turnaround efforts of the US business and ultimately to lead all global corporate HR functions. As we go through this session, I really want you to pay attention and look for some great insight regarding organizational tenure and leading an organization at massive scope and scale. Another thing that really excites me is one, I'm going to get to work with Jess here in a couple of weeks, and two is his experience at leading at scope and scale. Lastly, please don't forget to put questions in the question and answer box. Welcome, Jess.
Thanks, Dale. Great to be here.
Okay, we're going to start off with the first question. With your experience of being a leader in an organization as large as McDonald's, what do you find as the top 1 or 2 elements critical in developing and driving a culture of hospitality at scale?
Yeah, it's a great question, because McDonald's is an organization that's 2 million people in size, spread across the world. So if you're trying to, it's a big ship to try and move and to change over time. But in my experience, creating a compelling vision of how you want to be thought of by your customers and stakeholders, and then communicating that vision in an inspiring way is the first step in building a hospitality culture. It's about explaining how we want our customers to feel after every interaction with the brand, and then setting those expectations with everyone, whether they be frontline staff or managers or support staff, and then empowering those people to perform at that level every day. It's really important to have metrics around that as well, so that those expectations can be measured and we can hold each other to those. And out of that comes removing barriers. And you have to have a ruthless kind of approach to removing barriers to achieving that vision and that kind of performance.
Can I ask you, you touched on the word empowering. Could you sort of dig into that a little bit? Because I find it extremely, a very, very powerful word.
Sure. Well, I remember when I started at McDonald's, I was 16 years old. I lived and studied near London in the UK. And I got a part-time job at McDonald's because it was a flexible job and some of my buddies worked there and I was saving up to buy a car. So never thinking I would have a career there. But when I was being trained, I think I was being trained on how to cook fries. And I remember this guy training me and he was just really passionate about fries and how to cook them and how it was so important to McDonald's. And he used this technique. He said, I'm going to tune you into WIIFM. So I'm like, okay, this guy's crazy. And WIIFM stood for what's in it for me. And he talked to me about how, okay, you may just be cooking fries, but actually you're part of a team that's then supporting people who are working on the front counter, that are supporting people that are working in the rest of the kitchen, and how it's important that if you do this, this is how then the whole system works and how you fit in, and how you are empowered to kind of do whatever you need to do to, fulfill these expectations that I'm setting out for you. And that was really on day one. And so I kind of lived that way really throughout my career, is that empowering people. And it's easy to say, but if you really empower people, you have to accept that they don't always get it right. Sometimes they make mistakes, and it's about how you deal with that and how you deal with the mistakes, the bad times as well as the good. That's the real test of empowering your people. But if you can do it and you can unleash the innate capability that every person has, and if you can unleash that creativity and that focus and that passion, then you'll achieve results that you could never achieve if you didn't do it.
Awesome. Great insight. Something else you touched on in there, systems thinking, and really tying that together with a line worker at McDonald's to a company at that scale, and understanding how it's integral and how everyone is integral. Super insight. So let's move to the next question. And this one is, in this day and age, you do not see very often, specifically in the hospitality industry, but pretty much anywhere now. Being at McDonald's for 37 years and starting as a line cook, what advice would you give to someone with aspirations of moving up the ranks and not becoming complacent in a large organization?
Sure, that's a good question. Well, I'll be honest, like I said, I had no idea I was starting my career when I was 16 years old. In fact, I don't think my dad talked to me for a couple of years about it when I started working full time, because he was not very happy that I was working at McDonald's. But I tell you what, one of the things that I've always stuck with is this kind of saying that McDonald's has, which is, if you're green, you're growing, and if you're ripe, you're rotten. And I've always tried to take an evergreen approach to my personal journey. There's always something new to learn. There's always an experience, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. They're all experiences that grow you as a person and as a leader. And I try and read a lot. I try and keep up to date on what's happening, both in the US and around the world. And, there's some books that you read that are kind of okay, and there's others that actually make a real impression on you. And one that I only recently read actually was the book about a growth mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. And it's been around for a while, but I hadn't got to it. And she talks about the difference between people that have a fixed mindset, where they believe that their abilities are fixed and can't be changed, and the fact that they're less likely to flourish than those that have a growth mindset, who believe that their capabilities can be developed. So I think it's been proven now, time and time again, not just in the world's business, but in sport, in education, that people with a growth mindset who believe that they can learn, develop, and grow their capabilities produce outstanding results and are more likely to do that than those with a fixed mindset. The other thing, though, I talk about is resiliency, just hanging in there and grinding it out when you have to. I know that some of the biggest periods of personal development for me have come from times when not everything was going my way and I was, grinding it out, but you come out the other side. And that's where I said that the biggest personal development has come from for me.
Awesome. I can really relate to the book Growth Mindset, as in tech, it's something that's read often, coming from LinkedIn, who's owned by Microsoft. It was a book that pretty much everybody had. Another thing, the word resiliency. Let me ask you to dig into it a little bit more, because I find that specifically in today's workforce, there's technical skills, and then there's, we can call them soft skills, or these pieces, resiliency being one. How important do you find that when you're out searching for a new employee, or how important do you find that versus the technical skills, things like resiliency in today's work climate? Yeah,
I had a saying that I used an awful lot when I was the chief HR officer for McDonald's across Northern Europe, which was that, we hire people for their qualities, not their qualifications. Qualities, not qualifications. Because I can teach people skills. I've got access to some great, training systems, both within McDonald's and access to global, systems, training systems outside of McDonald's. But, some of those personal characteristics and character is something that, people are born with and develop through, their childhood. And those qualities are really, really important. And I would take people with the right qualities over the right qualifications pretty much every time. I've seen some immensely well-qualified people crash and burn in their careers at different companies because they don't have the right qualities. They don't fit in with the culture. There's not a mesh of, their personal qualities and the company's qualities. And certainly in McDonald's, I've seen, I say, some very impressive people, not work out just because of that. So I think qualities over qualifications. Not that qualifications aren't important, by the way. I'm a firm believer in studying and continuous, self-development, as I've already said. But the personal qualities are really important too.
Great feedback for everyone. Okay, the last question we have here, before we go to the chat or the question and answer space, is what would you consider the most positive, pivotal decision you made during your 37-year tenure at McDonald's?
Well, for me, it was coming to America. As a Brit, I was very happy doing my job. I was the chief people officer for McDonald's across Northern Europe, and was enjoying my career there, and we were doing some good work. And then I was asked to relocate to Chicago with my family to help support our US business, which was having some challenges back in 2013, 14, 15. And I did, and I came over here, and I spent 3 years working across the US with our leadership teams and our owner operators on a turnaround strategy for the US business, which is still running right now. And that then led into, a global role overseeing HR corporately as well as internationally. So I'd say, grasp opportunities when they come along. Don't have any regrets. Hey, are there things about moving to America that didn't work out as I thought? Yeah, sure. But overall, it's been a great move, and I'm loving working here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the insight. We have quite a few questions here, and I am looking at them quickly to pick two. I really like this one. In an age of AI resume scanning, how do we ensure that people with culture matching qualities that may not have one top qualifications on their resumes? So basically, how do we identify that person with those qualities that maybe their technical skills don't match, but those qualities match?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, look, when you're hiring at volume, which McDonald's does, across the world, incidentally, it's pretty difficult to get a job at McDonald's. When I was in Europe, 1 in 20 applications was successful in getting a job. Only 1 in 20 for a crew member position, for an entry-level position. We were in the privileged place of having, as I say, a great deal of people who wanted to come and work for us. So I think having systems where you can pick up on those qualities, those traits, really important. So for me, we do use technology to be able to scan resumes and CVs, as we say in Europe, but you've also got to add in the personal approach to that. So there's some situational questions that are asked in the interview process that bring out some of those qualities, but there's also a face-to-face element as well. And I think there's nothing more powerful really than sitting in front of a manager, sitting in a store, talking to that person and giving those managers the right skills and abilities to be able to look for those qualities. So it's about giving them the right questions, answers to look out for, things to probe, so that they're also not then using their own biases in that interview process too, that we've got some kind of consistency to it.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to try to squeeze one last question in here, because I think it's super important. How do you tell the difference between grinding it out to be resilient and acknowledging when a workplace is not providing an environment for growth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, resiliency for me is not at all costs. There are times where you have to grind it out, and there are times where, you could probably, you may come to the decision that actually this is just too hard and I'm going to go and give my gifts to someone else. And I think that's a very personal decision that people have to make. What I would say though is I think that the personal growth for me that's come in those time periods where I've been grinding it out, where things haven't always gone my way, have where I've learned the most, and they have helped accelerate my personal career and my journey in the times afterwards as well. So I think it's I'm a big fan of long service, as you can tell by having spent 37 years at McDonald's, but I'm changing careers now, and I'm really excited to go to global partners, to work with people like you, Dale, to help drive a culture of hospitality and help drive that business forward. So I think it's a personal decision, but I certainly wouldn't quit at the first hurdle, because there's growth and learning in that pain sometimes.
Great. Well, we really want to thank you for taking the time today and sharing your insight and vision with us. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Jess and Dale. What another great conversation, and what an amazing career. I noted a couple of sayings that really resonated in me, so thank you. Now I'd like to introduce you to SHFM member Dan Morgan, who will interview Betti Wiggins. Dan is an SHFM Charlotte, North Carolina Regional Committee co-chair. He is also programs manager for Wells Fargo. Dan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that introduction, and boy, I'm really excited to be able to introduce our next speaker and do this interview. So I'd like to welcome Betti. And Betti is one of our foremost authorities on school nutrition and food service management. In 2017, she was named the Officer of Nutrition Services for Houston Independent School District, which is the nation's 7th largest school district. And prior to that, Betti served as the Executive Director of the School Office of School Nutrition for Detroit Public Schools, where she was responsible for 141 school-based meal operations in the schools. So Betti, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. We really appreciate that, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So let's move on to our first question. And Betti, you have overseen and you've led some great transformations in many large K-12 school nutrition school systems across the Detroit and Houston and Washington, D.C. areas. So what are some of the skills and the styles you have used from your toolbox that helped you accomplish those turnarounds during the normal times? And also, how did you help lead your team through this pandemic crisis?
Well, thank you for the question, but I first like to say it's hard coming last when I could really just say ditto, ditto, ditto to all the things that my colleagues ahead of me have said. But in my area, one of the most important things is ownership. When you look at school nutrition, people don't realize that we are probably one of the leading hospitality industries in the country, because I get my kids, I get my customers from 4 years old until 19, and sometimes they stay with me for 12 years. Customers. So we are a hospitality unit, and we serve. And the values that we have are the same values that you would have in a BNI or in a commercial situation. I run a 280 limited service restaurants, 280. I'm probably the largest franchisor here in Houston, but my standards are a little different. So I have to deal with my employees a little bit differently. My employees don't work for tips. They don't have an opportunity necessarily to grow. Some of them are moms. Some of them are kids coming in trying to get a job. So and I'm their first job sometimes. So one of the things I have to do is instill ownership. And the way you do that is you tell them you're responsible for the process, the programs, and the problems. So I want them to be able to give me input. I want them to know that they're essential workers. They're not just school lunch ladies or school lunch gentlemen. This pandemic has shown how essential we are, because we were the first one after the police and the mailman. We were delivering meals to families. We had to find ways to feed kids. You asked me to say, what do I stand for? Well, I stand for feeding virtual learners. And that's what we're doing right now, is out there feeding kids in order for them to be able to continue their education process. But the whole thing about this, and I'm quite serious about this, is that I sit my ladies and my gentlemen, who people would not think are entrepreneurs. They are entrepreneurs. Some of my cafeteria workers generate $34 million a year in their school lunch program. And I have to entrust them with ownership. To generate that kind of revenue, I trust them with ownership. I trust them with respecting our menu, respecting our standards, and respecting our customer. Because if a kid goes home and tell a parent, I don't like the school lunch lady, I just lost a customer. So again, you have to give people the opportunity to feel like they belong. You have to let them know that when you look good, I look great. You have to be a servant leader. I find leadership the most exciting thing that I possibly could do, because I get to touch the lives right now, 1,300 people, and they are delivering service to thousands of people who are in need of it. So I don't feel like I have to challenge my employees. I feel like I have to set goals for them. I have to provide directions, and more importantly, I have to provide resources, whether they're human or physical. I have to provide training. I think I was sharing with you before about how when I do my revenue budget, I sit down with some of my ladies and I show them how to do a P&L. They don't understand all that other fancy stuff that we do, a general ledger report and all that. Simple P&L: revenue, expenses, profit. They know if it's red, that's bad. If it's not red, that's good. But they contribute. They own that cafeteria. When we have a marketing program, how they present it, they own it. When we get surveys from teachers or principals, that reflects on them and their ownership. So leadership, for me, is to tell them that you're the most important person that there is. And what you do provides us with the revenue that we need in order to buy good nutrition for our kids.
And you had a great example there where you talked about the P&L statement and teaching that lady how to run that. And it's not just about the mechanics of the pluses and the minuses. What I actually heard there was you invested time into them, and you helped with that. And you gave them time, your own time. And that's how people learn.
And that's important that, no matter where you start, I think we all start, all my colleagues who work at entry-level employees, that sometimes is my beginning and my end. Because, they're like seasonal workers. School year, September to June. Some of them stay over, some of them don't. But during that time, you want to give them a reason for doing a job. This is your business. You know, when the pandemic came and we started producing meals, we had to start producing a different kind of meal. They're like, Miss Wiggins, what are we doing? I said, honey, no, we don't even want us that can do it. And we did it. And they got out there and, you know, they came up from behind the line where they were serving kids to hit the back of trunks and throwing in 40-pound boxes of food to serve families and kids. So that's the kind of thing that we do here in Houston. I think we do well, is that we recognize that we have responsibility for the future, educating kids. And I have to tell my staff that all the time. And that's the reason we've been essential workers long before they started telling us that. You can call us school lunch ladies, but we've been essential workers. And we run a school meals program. We don't run a cafeteria. We run a school meals program. And we're starting to do the things that are necessary to instill a value. So our employees have a sense of value. They're not just a school lunch lady. You know, yeah, I run my school.
I love how you mentioned that, that you challenged them somewhat, but then you also set some expectations, but you're bringing them along for the ride.
Right.
Yes. Explain
that. And you know what? And it's a joyous ride too, because they then lead a team. Understand, I have so many different levels of management in order to get that meal out the door. I manage, I'm a corporate, you know, I'm corporate. So, you know, we have to depend upon leadership at our, as McDonald's would do, crew members. And we the same kind of principles that the two gentlemen before me talked about, and that's the reason I can say ditto, I have to employ. Because you know, like I told my employees, when you look good, I look great. And so, there's, you know, there's a selfish motive in there as well.
Well, thank you for that response. And you had mentioned to me that I was going to get one of those virtual learning shirts. So yes. I'm going to hold you to that.
Yes, see. This is just for you today. Tell me your size later on. Text me your size, and it's in the mail.
And I believe you had mentioned to me that you had gotten those shirts for your entire staff in Houston.
I bought these shirts because when the pandemic came and I saw how hard we were working, you know, we've been working 6 days a week since March of 2020. And I had to give us purpose. These shirts establish purpose. So I went and bought shirts for everybody. We got another shirt coming along that's saying, you know, 1 year over and still going strong. It's those kind of things that shirts, mugs, I can't give everybody a bonus. I don't have that. But do you know what it means, a sense of belonging, that we change our uniform based upon what we're doing at that particular time? I bought brand new jackets for all my managers because no longer are we just nutrition services. We serve good food. So the name of our company now is Good Food. I wish I could show you the back of the shirt because that's what it says, Good Food. So those are the kind of things you can do to instill ownership. You know, yeah, a mug, a pen, all those things have value, and it have them a sense of belonging, and it makes them feel special.
I love that sense of belonging concept. That is a true leadership concept, and it speaks volumes to the type of person you are. Let's move to our second question. And what that is what are some strategic takeaways that the B&I segment can learn from K-12 feeding?
That's a good question. And I've been waiting years to say this, so you just bear with me. Not only are we kissing cousins, we're kitchen cousins. We absolutely operate in the same arena. You have a fixed number in B&I. You have a fixed number of internal customers you have to serve. You don't deal with a lot of foot traffic coming from the outside. Generally, you have a board who set your prices, set your standards, set the expectations. We do things based upon a fixed, for different reasons. I provide meals for kids so they can enter the classroom ready to learn. And in B&I, you do it for other reasons, be it for the colleges, you got meal plans and a whole bunch of other stuff. Since we're both not really commercial, but we do the same things. I tell people all the time, for the people in colleges, I get them ready for you. I teach them how to eat and have good habits and have those wild expectations when they get to college. because we're all on the same team. One of the things I have to worry about is budget. I don't know if people realize that in child nutrition, there is no such thing as a free lunch, although people say we serve free lunches. But I have to worry about budget and bottom lines. I do marketing. I have to look what happened with the pandemic. We had to turn on a dime. You do that all the time. In colleges and universities, look what you just did. Look at what one of the sponsors he was doing. You know, this industry is just such an integral part of people's lives that sometimes people forget about the school meals program. And we're the very beginning. Grab and goes. We've done that in our program for a long time. So, you know, when I sit down and I plan my program and services, I just don't look at school food service magazines. I'm looking at what's happening in BNI. I'm looking at the Institute Food Manufacturers Association, and where all these kind of people are gathering that are bringing new concepts and new ideas into the market, because I do have to compete, not externally, but to keep my customer happy internally, so that, you know, number one, that I keep my job, but number two is that they can look to our organization as providing a service that's valued and valuable.
You also mentioned about within the four walls, like,
Okay.
and BNI has the same thing. We have our, you know, properties that we take care of, and we got to service the people within those four walls. But you mentioned an interesting concept about outside that.
Well, I have something I call beyond the plate. I really believe that child nutrition is more than just those 5 compartment trays or a sandwich and a milk and a juice. We do a lot of stuff outside of the 4 walls. Number one, that response that we have currently going on in Houston now, where we're working 6 days a week, we realized our community needed us. And by doing that, now we are viewed as an asset. The beyond the plate is more important. Even in BNI, you guys do it all the time. You're out doing blood drives and helping out the Boy Scouts and doing all sorts of things. And you do those things in order to build your reputation. And when you build your reputation, sometimes that happens. It falls to the bottom line. Building a reputation in the community sometimes drives your business. You may not think it does, but and also for your employees. If the employees are working somewhere where the community value them and talk about them all the time, that's a happy employee who could tend to be more productive and will come in your cafeteria or do whatever. Interrelationships, like I all the time want to meet people in other industries and say, hey, can you come and show my kids this or that? Or could you come and visit with my kids, talk about, you know, something? Can one of your chefs come and do a demonstration? Those are the kind of things that you can do in BNI that drives your reputation in the community. Because I got the biggest megaphone in the whole city. I tell people all the time, don't make me angry. I got 208,000 kids that I can drag down the middle protesting or doing whatever. So, you know, it's a good opportunity for you all to do things, or for us in hospitality, us kissing cousins and kitchen cousins, to drive the importance of what we deliver.
Beyond the plate is what I heard, not just what we're focusing inside our operations, and also being an asset to the community. Huge stuff.
Yes.
And a little bit about briefly about what you did for the assets for the community in Houston.
What I had briefly about the asset we bring to Houston, the asset that we are?
Yeah, during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, we have delivered millions of pounds of food to families. We started March 13th and delivering food to families because we were the only ones that could do it. We had the resources, and we partnered with the food bank. We partnered with NRG. I'm quite sure you all have seen the things on TV with the long lines and NRG and people putting food into the cars. We worked the National Guards. We were always there in the mix because one of the things that we knew how to do well, we knew how to organize food in order to feed large groups of people and move them along fast. No one knew we had that skill. No one else had that skill. We knew how to set up service lines. While they were doing this, doing that, no, don't do that. This is the way you do it. We had that. I had ladies that were teaching National Guardsmen how to set up service lines so that the lines could move fast because they wanted to move it here. But then, no, this is where you stand. So, I mean, those are the kind of skills that we bought, and we proved ourselves to be an asset. And during that time, you know, and when it was 101 degrees outside, we were still on the line, and we had to bring in buses to cooling stations for our employees. We have really taken on the role to feed families in order to feed kids. That's what our responsibility is. Here in our district, we have something called wraparound service. And the highest recognition that I've received is when our superintendent said that child nutrition is one of our essential wraparound services. So we stepped out from behind that line and now are feeding kids where we need to in a holistic approach, because a hungry child cannot learn. And so we're taking that on to make sure that he or she and their family are fed as well as we possibly can provide.
Fantastic story on teamwork there. Amazing, and appreciate all that work that your team did to help those individuals. So another quick question, just a few more minutes, and that is, what about a person in your respected leader in your life that has helped shape your hospitality mindset? Do you have anybody in your past?
Yeah, I really do. And this is not a commercial, okay? But this is a shout out for Bill Marriott, who is president of the Marriott Corporation. I first met him 100 years ago. Well, no, I'm not quite 100 yet, but some years ago when I was a young manager, he would come to Detroit. And because he was on the board of General Motors, and he would have meetings for all our young managers, and he would always speak. And I just how committed he was to service. I mean, he was very calm about it, but he was very committed to service. And he said, if you take care of the employee will take care of the customer will take care of all of us. So my quick story is, I had a school district in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I had asked Mr. Marriott, why hadn't you visit us? I mean, we're a piece of your business. You know, the Marriott School Support Services now is Sodexo, but then it was Marriott School Support Services. And I said, why haven't you visited? What did we do? You need to come and see us. And I had all these VPs, regional this and yada, yada, that. And so I'm just a little manager, and who had the audacity to talk to the president. And he came to visit. So he walks the talk. Take care of your employees, and employees will take care of the customer, and the customers will take care of all of us. Just that recognition made me more determined than ever. And I had some of the best accounts and best numbers that, and I had some rough accounts when I was with Marriott, but and it stuck in my mind, and I've carried that with me all the years from working in Patterson, New Jersey to Atlanta, Georgia, or Washington, D.C., or wherever I have. You take care of the employee will take care of the customer, and the customer will take care of all of us.
Fantastic, fantastic end to our chat here. I surely appreciate that. What nuggets of information that I've learned, and I hope that some of our folks on the call have learned. So thank you for sharing that with us. Sure. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Not often do school lunch ladies get to be on national platforms talking about leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, back over to you.
Thank you, Betti and Dan. Betti, your passion just really shows. Great to have a fellow Houstonian on today, and great to hear of all the parallels that your enormous school district has with the B&I segment. So thank you. Before we close today's session, I would like to bring back all of our leaders and ask each of you one final question, and that is, how do we lead in today's current social climate? How do we encourage courageous conversations, bringing people together? Zia, I believe we started with you, so would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you, Michael. That's a very good question and a very important one, especially in the current climate. I would say our inner child. right? Let's bring our inner child out. Let's talk about curiosity, compassion, and care. That is the recipe for success when it comes to diversity and inclusion and all the social justice issues that we're dealing with today in today's environment, especially on top as best as we can. It will never fail you. As long as you're curious and you're willing to learn, as long as you're compassionate and you care about others, you will succeed.
Fantastic, thank you. Jess, same question. Happy to repeat the questions if need be.
Yes, please do.
Okay, how do we lead in today's current social climate, and how do we encourage courageous conversations, bringing people together?
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things I learned leading the McDonald's response to COVID-19 globally from a people point of view was that having compassion and care and thought for your fellow, colleagues is absolutely crucial. These have been really trying times, not just in the US, but around the world. And, we've all had to kind of dig deep, learn new things and support each other through that. Particularly the US with, social and political kind of unrest that there's been, particularly over the last year or so as well, has, I think, really brought to the fore the need for us to be able to have compassionate, honest, open dialogue, with each other, both, at work and at home as well, about, what's right and what's not right. And something I've tried to encourage colleagues about, having these difficult conversations is also, there are a lot of people, frankly, who are scared of getting things wrong, so therefore they don't speak. And that's not a great situation either. Change comes about when there is, everyone has a voice, everyone, participates, because that's when you can make meaningful change. And I think that needs to show, there needs to be compassion and empathy on all sides of the argument when you're having those conversations. Sometimes people can misspeak and not mean it, or they're clumsy because they're not as well versed in having those conversations. So I think supporting each other to have those conversations in a safe environment is really important, because that's where change happens. And if your intentions are right, then I think you can always work through those.
Great, thank you, Jess. And Betti, same question for you. Again, happy to repeat the question if you'd like.
Now, I fully understand the questions, because a lot of this, what you're talking about, I've been dealing with all my life, not only as a woman, but as a minority. And the tough conversations are not really hard to have if you're willing to change. You've got to be willing to change. You've got to be willing to say, hey, what's your opinion? What's your idea? What can you bring to the table? I really like this conference because look at the diversity that you have brought together as your speakers. Not one of them are good old white guys from the 7th floor of the tower. So I really think that this is the opportunity we have. We have to talk across business lines. We have to talk across racial and ethnic lines. We even have to do things gender neutral that we never had to deal before. But first off, you have to be willing and wanting to change. You have to recognize that it is time to change. I'd say, one group's had a good run for 450 years. Shove over and let somebody else have an opportunity, but you've got to have that. We're all in this together. And you know what makes me feel that we have the capacity to do that? 9/11. When 9/11 happened in this country, we were hugging everybody. We didn't care what color you were, who you were, whatever you were. We knew that you were an American. You were part of this community. You were part of this country. And we were hugging folks just like and that's what gave me hope. And that's the reason, I know we can change what you're doing here today. I want to thank you for the opportunity to think that I had something to say and to share with other people, and it had value. So it's not scary. All you got to do is be willing to change. And oops, I made a mistake, and to genuinely say, I'm sorry. if I made a mistake, but now I'm better informed.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Zia, Jez, and Betty. Appreciate all of your insightful answers today. And at this point, I'm going to send it back to Sunita for some final words.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael, for keeping us on track. And thank you to Zia, Jez, and Betty. And, you know, I don't know about you all, but I want Betty to be my friend. She's my BFF. She's my friend in my head. Love her. And thank you to Z, Dale, and Dan for some amazing questions as well. Following today's event, you will receive a conference evaluation. So please feel free to fill that out. It does help in the planning stages for next year's advisory group as well for this conference. So it's really important that you help us out there. Before we sign off, I do want to remind everyone about the rest of the CIC series that will be coming up and topics around the human side of hospitality. I encourage you to register and attend them all. Strengthening Ourselves on Wednesday, April 21st, and Connecting with Customers on April 28th. Both of those sessions will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as the special interest sessions on May 6th and May 4th and May 6th. SHFM will continue offering great virtual events after CIC wraps up. So please join us on May 13th for the Reconstituting the Foodservice Workforce virtual event. And then please save the date for the national conference, which will be December 6th to the 8th at the beautiful Omni Amelia Island Resort in Florida. We all need some sunshine in our lives, so please register there too. And to make it all easy, we're going to put a link into the SHFM events page into the chat so you can find details about this. Once again, thank you for being here with us. Thank you to everyone that was speaking, to the panelists, and thank you again. And we all hope to see you soon in person.